So Michael Afton sitting around. His father didn't come home with the milk. He doesn't know what to do. Ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs, the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPP is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. I'm your host with the toast, right toast, here to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's. Oh my goodness, my cats want to be all over me right now. I'm usually a little more prepared for podcast episodes. Like I'll write 2 pages of notes on stuff I want to talk about, because I'll talk about a specific topic. But I kind of wanted to take today to start brainstorming my FNAF timeline. I think it's about time I do it, especially if I'm going to keep pushing the channel to cover horror more broadly. Obviously, I'll still be covering FNAF at least twice, if not 3 times a month. I guarantee you, for a while, until my algorithm better fits. You know, I don't want to tank the channel's momentum by fully abandoning FNAF or anything like that. And I love Five Nights at Freddy's, so I never would. But if I'm transitioning away from being solely focused on Five Nights at Freddy's, it's kind of an now or never situation for that timeline, right? And I kept putting it off because it's such a big project. Like, doing a FNAF timeline is always a question on how wide do you want to go? Because you can make a narrow, like, focused, main character only FNAF timeline in like 30, 40 minutes about. But the more information and more, like, all-encompassing you want your timeline to be, the longer it starts becoming. And like I think like you could have a completely valid timeline that's 30 to 40 minutes, and you can also have like a 12-hour timeline. So it's like, where do I draw that line? And I think I would draw that line somewhere around the 1.5 to 2-hour mark. And I don't know if I've got it in me to make a video like that, to be honest. I mean, I've got it in me to make that video. I don't know if I've got the time in the day to make that video. I'd probably have to hire a couple editors, not even for the timeline, but just to make the other shit that goes out on these channels while I focus on the timeline. You know what I mean? So, and like, I don't know if I have like the fun for that. So I'm going to try my best. I want to try to get maybe it out in December, but I haven't even, like, today is day 1 of brainstorming. I've been making a document in the background for a while now, but as far as like the actual timeline, I haven't even really started brainstorming. So I think these next couple of podcast episodes are going to be the beginning. I've got a blank little notepad here with how many, like 20 or 30 pages free and a pen. It begins. I have no notes written down. It's just time to brainstorm about the FNAF timeline. In the beginning, there was William. Could you imagine if like it just me like, and then there's Henry, like for like an hour? That'd be the worst fucking podcast. But I think a good place to start. I've got the Lork board pulled up. I still need to finish the Lork board for Security Breach. I guess that might be a video I do before the timeline. Not sure. Because the Lork board videos kind of underperform. But if I'm only 1 game away, I might as well do it. The Lork board is good for cross-reference. So I do have that pulled up. But as far as like beginning of the timeline, right? I think Secret of the Mimic is going to tell us a lot. So now it's like, do I wait until after Secret of the Mimic to actually do the timeline so I can incorporate what we learn from Secret of the Mimic into the timeline? Maybe, I don't know. There's always going to be a game coming out 6 months to a year that will tell us more about what we don't know. So I think I have to just adopt that, like, a timeline is a time capsule of your best guess of the story at that moment. So I don't think waiting until after Secret of the Mimic makes that much sense, unless I can't get it out. Here's a real, like, I'm being super real and honest and transparent with you. YouTube ad rates fluctuate throughout the year. Q4 has the highest ad rates by far because every company is trying to get people to buy everything for the holiday season. So YouTubers just get paid more straight up from like beginning of November to end of December, which is why a lot of creators put out big videos right around that time. I am the same way. The game's only timeline came out in December. That wasn't on accident. So just like being super transparent about that. Like I love content creation and I do this because I love it, but I also need to eat. So like that's the arithmetic and the mental math you're doing when you do this job. If I can't get a timeline out in December, I'm going to then take the year to work on it and put it out next year. Like that's just being straight up transparent, because it's a matter of, if I'm going to put that much time and money and effort into a video, I'm going to need it to perform well to stay afloat. And by perform well, also earn a lot, just, I don't know. I hope that doesn't come across as like, yay, I love capitalism. I hate capitalism. I've made this clear since day dot. One of my in the third month of this channel, I put out like, is FNAF political, talking about how I'm a socialist. Like I do not like capitalism, but we exist within a capitalist structure. So as much as I would love to just do what I want to and not worry about money, I cannot. That is not something we can do. It's like the whole, I know my leftists out there have seen this meme, where it's the meme of a dude coming out of a well, and there's this peasant who's like, I think we should improve the monarchy somewhat. And the dude is coming out of the well like, yet you participate in the monarchy. Curious. It's the fourth panel of a comic that's making fun of that like smug rebuttal that means nothing, where like people will go online and be like, oh, capitalism sucks. And then their replies will be like, oh yeah, said the person on their iPhone. It's like, okay, but like, that's the world we live in. You're allowed to critique the world you live in. So when it comes to like, I'm planning things out to optimize earning, it's not because I like capitalism. I fucking hate capitalism. I'd be doing this. If we lived in a moneyless society and you could do whatever and you would just have basic money and your basic needs met, I'd probably still just do this. I really, really like this. There's like 2 or 3 things job wise that I am incredibly passionate about. This is one, voice acting is another, and teaching is the third. Those are like the 3 things that like, if I could do one thing, it would be one of those 3 things. But, speaking of dream jobs, if you like podcasts and you like hearing about me talk about dream jobs, a lot of y'all don't know, on the 3rd channel, which if you don't know, I have a 3rd channel. It's called Ride Doze. It's where I post audiobooks, video compilations, podcast, another different podcast, which we'll get to. And soon I'm considering doing like taking the streams and like, if there's a game that takes 3 or 4 streams, editing that together into one long video and then uploading that as well. And come the new year, there'll be a brand new type of content I've never made before that I'm already in like recording and doing, that'll come out next year. I'm really excited about that. But that's like the 3rd channels are like the long form content goes. But on that 3rd channel, I started a podcast with my wife called Etc., where the whole point is we kind of just talk about whatever. A lot of it is like Reddit stories and personal stories, tier lists, stuff like that. But the most recent episode, we actually talked about our dream jobs. So if you like podcasts and you like me talking about dream jobs, you should go check that out. If I remember, I'll put it in the cards. But full disclosure, I probably won't remember. Go Ride Doze, ETC, I think episode 7. So dream job is in the title or the thumbnail or something. Anyway, huge tangent aside, we're 8 minutes in. I haven't started talking about the timeline. Because we don't have Secret of the Mimic, we have to start from thinking about like the beginning of the timeline. The earliest information we have from the Silver Eyes, which is an alternate universe, the FNAF 3 minigames where we see stage 01, the FNAF 4 minigames where we see presumably Fredbear. What other information do we get from the very, very beginning? We have Fall Fest mentions and, Curse of Dreadbear Fall Fest, but no clear information on what that is. But we can make assumptions here, right? Like Secret of the Mimic seems to imply that the Mimic is around 1979, earliest solid date we have so far. Fall Fest, 1983, I know there's Fall Fest 83 from Help Wanted. What was that one Fall Fest poster in Help Wanted 2? I want to say it was 1970. Yes, 1970 to 1983. I think that makes the most sense to be like a time span. If y'all can't tell, Casey is right here on my lap, just like pawing up. And then 1979 is an important date for the Mimic, which lands right in Fall Fest. And we had kind of this idea that the Mimic was related to Fall Fest anyway, right? The felt suits in the basement of Ruin. The fact that if Glitchtrap is the mimic, which we have one of the questions, we'll talk about that later, that it picks a felt suit to represent itself within Help Wanted and like everything moving forward. So Mimic and Fall Fest, there's definitely a connection there. We know Fredbear's opens up. We don't actually know when Fredbear's opens, but it is open around 1983. Is open. We know Freddy's opened. Freddy's we have a lot more information on, right? Like Freddy's opened 1983, according to the coins that we can collect, which says established 1983, and it closed sometime after the missing child incident. I want to say 86 makes the most sense here because one of the newspapers in FNAF 1 says after looking for buyers for over a year or like over the past year, and I'll double check this before I make the actual timeline. Don't worry. This is brainstorming. I'm allowed to the point of brainstorming is you vomit out information and you double check and verify when you start writing it down, right? But I want to say closed around 86 because MCI being 1985 seems the most likely. Just judging based off of what we learned from the week before, Into the Pit, I believe the Silver Eyes also it's 85. It's 85 in like every situation it's presented. So 1985 just makes sense for the missing child incident. And the newspaper said it took, I want to say about a year to look for a buyer until they gave up. So I want to say Freddy's closes 86. FNAF 2 Freddy's was open completely within 1987 because the newspaper when it closes mentioned after a few short weeks after the bite of 87 they closed down, so it was only open for a few short weeks, meaning it was completely within 1987. Then we get the FNAF 1 location. I think I've been won over to the idea that FNAF 1 takes place in 1993. I think that makes a lot of sense. As far as when it's open and closes, we don't have a lot of information, but I wager to bet that I hazard to guess that Follow Me takes place after FNAF 1. So if FNAF 1 is already like on the ropes and barely surviving as is, and we know that Follow Me, the doors are shuttered, I've been thinking for a while that like FNAF 1 is Michael trying to do something for William and he fails and William goes to do it himself. And the front door is boarded shut in Follow Me, which tells me that FNAF 1 is closed by Follow Me. So I want to say that 93 is actually the last year it's open. The problem is we don't know when it opened. So I'm just going to shoot out a number. We'll just say 1990 ? But I'm kind of comfortable guessing that it closes in 1993. Then we have I should also like draw an arrow for FNAF 4 taking place in 1983. Then we have FNAF 2 in 87, FNAF 1 in 93. I'm pretty confident that Sister Location takes place after after Follow Me, which would be after FNAF 1. So we'll put Follow Me here, and then Sister Location happens. We don't have a solid year, but it's also not important, right? The placement of Sister Location has always less so been important on the year it happens and more so in what order it happens. And we know it definitely happens before FNAF 6. It's kind of the only definite answer we get there. So before FNAF 6, I think FNAF 3 takes place after Sister Location. I do think Michael working as a zombie makes sense. I think it's fun for the FNAF 3 location anyway. And then FNAF 6, and then Ultimate Custom Night and FNAF World happen right in there, right? So right now we're looking at a basic timeline being just the games being FNAF 4, FNAF 2, FNAF 1, Sister Location, FNAF 3, FNAF 6, Ultimate Custom Night, FNAF World. Right, because I've been thinking for a while that this is going to be real. I hope that like FNAF fans are the ones watching this. If you're a casual fan, I might lose you. But like Ultimate Custom Night and FNAF World, I've been saying I think happen at the same time based on how the puppet talks in Ultimate Custom Night, right? I think one of the Marionette's lines is, I don't hate you, but you need to stay out of my way. And things like that. It's like, okay, well then what are you doing? And FNAF World makes sense for, even though the eyes and the speech patterns are similar to what we know of Cassidy, what we think of Cassidy, I think it makes sense that FNAF World is being created mostly or primarily by Charlotte Emily, the Marionette. So that's like just the game timeline of the Scott Games era. But now as we move on to the Steel Wool era of FNAF, and I'll include Illumix, I think after Ultimate Custom Night, we get the Fazbear's revitalization efforts. So that's when we get Special Delivery. That's when we get Help Wanted. And it's through Special Delivery and Help Wanted that the Mimic 1 program is cultivated and becomes an active threat. So this is when Glitchtrap is like cultivated. I would want to say born, because I truly think much of what Glitchtrap knows of William Afton is from the Fall Fest days. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I'll talk about that again in the questions that I've pulled up for today. But that's when Glitchtrap is, I want to say, cultivated. So then we have, after that, Security Breach. Now, Help Wanted 2 is interesting, so I'm going to split the page here. On the left side, we have Security Breach, and then Ruin. I want to say soon after, like within a year or so. And then simultaneously at different points, we have Help Wanted 2. Because like there are certain minigames of Help Wanted 2 that take place when the Pizzaplex is working and functional, when it's like in Security Breach levels of decay, and there's some like Ruin levels of decay minigames. So I kind of feel like it's definitely before Ruin, but it's alongside Security Breach, right? Because one of the endings is the beginning of Ruin, so it has to be before Ruin, but it's kind of like alongside. It's alongside Security Breach and up until Ruin, and then that's kind of where the timeline ends right now. Is Ruin being our most up-to-date thing, throwing in the other games, right? We have Secret of the Mimic, which is likely, which we know is going to be, unless that 1979 date isn't when the game's taking place, but just like when the secret happened and we're going to uncover that. It's possible. You know, Secret of the Mimic might take place in the modern day and someone's uncovering what this 1979 secret is. But it's also possible that this game takes place in 1979. We don't know. It's not out. We have a teaser and like a demo that isn't public. So like we don't know yet. But so I'll wager to bet Secret of the Mimic 1979. And then Into the Pit. If it's in the game's timeline, which I'm still like back and forth, but like if it's in the game's timeline, we don't have a super solid date, but we know it's after the Missing Child incident and after the FNAF 1 location closes. Right? Because it seems like it's in the building the Missing Child incident happened, but at that point it's no longer a Freddy's, it's a Jeff's Pizza. So if I had to guess, I'm guessing it takes place somewhere in the early 2000s before FNAF 3, if it takes place in the game's timeline. That's my guess. So right now, is that all the games that have like that need to be placed on a timeline? Because there's like Freddy in Space and stuff that doesn't matter for this. Chica in Space, which is great, but doesn't matter. FLAF, which doesn't really matter. I think that's everything. Oh, and you know what? For posterity's sake, right here, I'll put the week before, right before FNAF 1. I'll throw in a Fazbear Frights question mark after FNAF 6. Fazbear Frights question mark. Tales from the Pizzaplex, I'll put right between Help Wanted and the Security Breach. I'll put Return to the Pit next to Into the Pit. And I'll put VIP right next to, right before Security Breach. Okay, so right now, talking major releases, surface level, I'm feeling for a timeline. Secret of the Mimic, FNAF 4, FNAF 2, the week before, FNAF 1, Follow Me, Sister Location, Into the Pit / Return to the Pit, FNAF 3, FNAF 6, Ultimate Custom Night FNAF World, Fazbear Frights question mark. You know, I guess Into the Pit would be after FNAF 6, right? No, it doesn't necessarily have to. No, it does. No. Oh, God, I'm so torn on this, right? Because, like, anything that takes place after the Man in Room 1280 would have to take place after FNAF 6, right? William is dead. But like Into the Pit specifically, the only thing that needs to be in play for the story Into the Pit as we are aware of it is Eleanor. And even then, we know she uses that ball pit for a long time. We don't even know if she's active, right? The thing that bothers me the most about Eleanor is we have fucking zero information on her origin. We don't know where there's one day she's found in a dump, and she's just is in a car trunk for some reason with no explanation, and it's never delved into, which is crazy because of how important she is. But like Fetch needs to take place after FNAF 6 because Fetch is one of the things that William exploded on. But William didn't explode on the Into the Pit ball pit. The Into the Pit ball pit is like that because of the MCI. So I think Into the Pit is one of the few Fazbear Fright stories that can take place before FNAF 6. Which is very important, right? Because like I understand that Oswald's family is like pretty poor, but the technology described in Into the Pit is very early 2000s. And like FNAF 6 seemingly takes place as like a lot of people assume 2023, which I think is possible, super possible, especially since it has to take place after FNAF 3, which is 20 years, 30 years, something like that, after FNAF 1 shuts its doors. So like, or technically Freddy's 1, we're not sure exactly, but a lot of people assume FNAF 1. Yes, like their cell phone is old. Maybe that's just them being poor. The computers at the library are described very old fashioned, like old early 2000s, big monitors, keyboards, and the like. So if Into the Pit has to take place after FNAF 6, that breaks. It doesn't work. But because Into the Pit doesn't necessarily have any of the William-infected items in it, I think Into the Pit is okay to take place way earlier than a lot of the other Fazbear Fright stories. I think that's fine. That's, okay, issue solved. For a moment, I was like, oh god, I disproved Stitchline games. No. That can be separated. That's fine. But anyway, Fazbear Frights question mark. I'll start it from the top because there was the huge tangent. Game's timeline based on a pure guess about when Secret of the Mimic takes place. Secret of the Mimic, FNAF 4, FNAF 2, the week before, FNAF 1, Follow Me, Sister Location, Into the Pit / Return to the Pit, FNAF 3, FNAF 6, Ultimate Custom Night / FNAF World, Fazbear Frights, FNAF AR, so Special Delivery, FNAF Help Wanted, Tales from the Pizzaplex and VIP happening at this time, Security Breach and Help Wanted 2 happening at this time, Ruin. I think that's where I'm at. If we're talking like malleable, like what can be changed right now, like I mentioned, Sister Location can pretty much show up anywhere, depending on what you believe, anywhere from fucking FNAF 4 to FNAF 6, realistically. I think, right, if we're talking Sister Location specifically, I think it makes the most sense for Mike to go down there after William has been spring locked. So that's why it leads me to think post Follow Me, aka post FNAF 1. Because like, I think it makes a lot of, because again, I went down there just like you asked me to. It makes a lot of sense to me to be like William having this contingency plan of like, if something happens, you need to go down to the bunker and finish what I started. So like, why else would William get him to do that? Other malleableness, FNAF is years. Years are super malleable. I didn't even write down years for 3 or 6. I think I'll go with the common 2023 for FNAF 6. And I gotta look up the Steam page for FNAF 3. Fake fan, I don't remember what the Steam description says. 30 years after Freddy Fazbear Pizza closed its doors, the events that took place there have become nothing more than a rumor. Yeah, no, I'm going to be honest, I still think they're talking about Freddy's, the original Freddy's. Because a lot of people are like, why would they say 30 years after Freddy's closes its doors if Freddy's opened again? Okay, but like read the second sentence of that paragraph. 30 years after Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed its doors, the events that took place there have become nothing more than rumor and childhood memory. The events that took place there at that location, the MCI. I think 30 years after the MCI makes a lot of sense. I'm saying 2015 for FNAF 3. Fight me if you disagree. Because if you disagree, then it's FNAF 1 takes place in 1993. 30 years later, in 2023, FNAF 3 happens. And Henry sees in the newspaper about FNAF 3, and within a year makes FNAF 6. Or HRY 223 doesn't mean Henry 2023, which is also possible. 223 could just be the 223rd log that he's recorded. Totally possible. Because, to be honest, or it could be like February 2023 or something like that. You know, like 223 could be a lot of things. And frankly, just meaning 2023, I've never seen someone write a year, but just leave out the 0. That feels weird. I think February 2023 is honestly, it makes the most sense for what that number could mean. But this is what I'm talking about with making a timeline. We just spent about 20 minutes getting the game's order. And frankly, that's the easiest part of this entire timeline. We didn't even talk about what the fuck happens in these games. Perfect example. When does Michael why is FNAF 2 and FNAF 1 before sister location if Mike gets fired for foul odor? Well, I think it's likely. Let's go through Michael's timeline because that'll flesh out a lot of this. Michael Afton. First known deeds, 1983, kills his brother. His brother, Dave. Thank you, Hyperdroid and other. I know Mama Kato put out a similar theory because I just think Crying Child's name is Dave at this point. So 1983, Michael Afton kills Dave. We don't have a lot of information on what he was doing before then, but I do think sometime after Midnight Motorist. I think like after 1983, Michael is he turns into like a bad, like he was already kind of like this edgy bad kid, but the grief and the guilt just shuts him down. He breaks out of the house. He goes to visit Dave's grave in the woods. He goes to his favorite lake to fish. Like he just shuts down. And I think Midnight Motorist is showing us the culmination of that, where William Afton, drunk and pissed off, goes off and kills Charlotte Emily. And then he comes home and he's like, where's my son? I need to abuse him. Casey did not like that. I sneezed off camera and Casey fucking booked it. Mrs. Afton is like, dude, leave him be. He's had a rough day. And William Afton's like, no, I need to be an abusive father. So he tries to break into Michael's room and it's locked. And I think that the important thing about this minigame is that Michael Afton has a locked door and a window in his bedroom. And it's like, duh. But no, I think that's important, right? Because here's the logic. Follow me, okay? Follow me, the FNAF 3 minigame. William Afton, pissed off, is like, this is the last straw. Hold on, let me write down what I've said so far. Because he's like, he went off to that place again. I think that place is Dave's grave and the lake. Because again, so for people like the lake, in Curse of Dreadbear, the lobby is Fall Fest. And we see a barn. We see a bunch of Fall Fest stuff. We see the FNAF 4 house in the distance. We're surrounded by trees, and there's a giant lake. In FNAF, in Security Breach, there's again a giant lake surrounded by dead trees next to the FNAF 6 location, which, again, I believe the FNAF 6 location is where Junior's was. So again, it's placing a lake nearby this area. There's Old Man Consequences, who has this big lake surrounded by a bunch of trees. So I think that near the Fall Fest area, which I think is the clearing in the woods in Midnight Motorist, is a lake. And I think that's the linking thread for Michael Afton, is that lake. Anyway, William Afton is like, he'll be sorry when he gets back. So if your son is locking his doors and breaking out through windows that you locked the window, but he still broke through the window, what do? You move his bedroom to something without locking doors and without windows. FNAF 4's nightmares begin to happen. And then I think the answer for what is FNAF 4 is a combination of a couple things. I think Didophobia was very purposeful in the idea of showing us testing chambers where William was recreating the FNAF 4 nightmares and putting people through it. I think after some time, when he notices Michael having these nightmares, he goes to start experimenting on his son. And I think it is a combination, right? It's, I am punishing you for killing Dave by torturing you forever, and I'm using you as a test subject. And I want to be clear here, this is not a will care theory. It's not, I cared so much about Dave and you killed him, how dare you? It's, you broke one of my assets and fucked up my business plan. So now you need to be punished. So it begins as he moves into that room and then eventually models the FNAF 4 testing chambers after the room that he put his son in. So after that, FNAF 4 testing. And he just keeps Michael in that hole for a while. And then, you know, this is 1983. Sometime after 1983 that happens. And then come 1987. William Afton is noticing that, and this is Michael's timeline, so that's why I'm not going too much into what William Afton is doing in the background. William Afton is off doing his own thing, and eventually he notices some of the robots are acting strangely at the FNAF 2 location, but he can't get too close to study it without raising any suspicion. So he needs someone who is not on like a weird, who's not like, would not trigger any red flags working there. Well, he has one person who he's been torturing and experimenting on for years, who will probably do anything he asks him to. So 1987... William saves him from the nightmares. And all he has to do now is say, like, look, Michael, I can keep these nightmares from ever affecting you again, but you need to work at this location and dismantle some of these animatronics so I can study what's going on with them. And look, it's the perfect manipulation. If I'm Michael Afton in this moment, my dad just saved me from the worst 4 years of my life, and he said, all you have to do is get a job. Yes, sir. And it's funny, because in a way, this kind of meta, it kind of explains the meta of this game on how Michael keeps surviving all of these life and death FNAF scenarios. No wonder he's so good at Five Nights at Freddy's, specifically like FNAF 2, FNAF 1, FNAF 3, FNAF 6, right? No wonder he's so good at this, because William put him in the FNAF 4 torture chamber for years. All he's been doing is this. That's why he's so good at doing Five Nights at Freddy's and so bad at everything else. He works one day at the FNAF 2 location and he gets fired. One day and he gets fired. Yeah, and once he gets fired, William's like, well, you're useless. Back into the nightmare chamber. And then 6 years go by and it's FNAF 1. William once again wants to get close to these animatronics, but doesn't want to raise any alarm bells, so he gives Michael another chance. Use your other opportunity, do it again, but at this time, a much less scrutinized building. And Michael does for about a week. He tries to get close to these animatronics, figure out what's going on, but again, he gets fired. So the question is like, okay, why is he getting fired for tampering with the animatronics and foul odor? One, there's the possibility that William doesn't like clean him up or anything. He just kicks him out from the nightmare chamber straight into work. What I think is more likely and less of a fucking fan fiction at this point is if Michael is working for William to investigate these animatronics, canonically, the animatronics smell disgustingly because the bodies are still in there. So if Michael is trying to get parts of these animatronics or learn something about them or tampering with them in any way, then not only would he be tampering with the animatronics, but he would be in contact with them and that smell would likely rub off on him. Or another completely possible explanation, the Fazbear's company keeps firing people for foul odor as a way to scapegoat the odor from the building, right? Like it's so straightforward that like a parent is like, oh, there's a foul, stagnant odor in this building. And Fazbear goes, we're so sorry. We found that one of our employees was the cause of it. We fired them. And then they get to brush it under the rug. So like foul odor, I don't think is that meaningful. If anything, it's maybe telling us that they're both Michael and Michael is stinky. Regardless, same story happens in FNAF 1. Okay, sorry, I had a whole bunch of shit to write down. I say that like I'm not just going to cut out that like 2 minutes of silence there. So Michael gets fired again. But at this point, William doesn't throw him back into the bunker, or back into the nightmare chamber yet. He goes, okay, you can't do this. The place closed down. I'm going to do this. You stay right here at home, do whatever. But if I don't make it back, follow these instructions. And he leaves. Then William does Follow Me, where he tries to dismantle the animatronics and he dies. You might be asking, okay, well then why are the sister location stuff? That's part of the William timeline. I think the toys are that. We'll get there. Probably not on today's podcast though. So Michael Afton sitting around, his father didn't come home with the milk. He doesn't know what to do. So he pulls out that clipboard of instructions that he left behind in case he doesn't come back. And Michael Afton goes down into the sister location bunker, and sister location happens as we see it. And I do think something in the a side ending that isn't necessarily canon, but I think that does happen, right? In the secret office, you can punch in 1983 and see the FNAF World testing chamber monitors. I think Michael does this. That's the flip. That's why Michael turns on William. While doing all this sister location stuff, he learns that the nightmares he's been going through, his dad isn't trying to save him from them. His dad is the one inflicting them on him. He's been down there for like 10 years at this point because his father put him there. That's why he flips. That's why he's now against William and trying to take him down. But it's too late. After he learns about that, he gets captured and scooped and should die. But he doesn't. Whether it's just sheer willpower or the leftover remnant on the scooper, Michael is still alive. Man, we're at 42 minutes. I'm not even done Michael's timeline. All right, let's speed through the rest of Michael's timeline and then try to take a couple questions. Then again, there's a lot of me thinking in silence, so maybe I'm closer to like 30 minutes, who knows? I don't. The recording's at 43 minutes at this point. Only you, the viewer, know. If you know what the time left in the video is, comment below. I gotta do more YouTube shit. I'm such a bad I never remember to do the call to actions, and they're so important. Like hey, there's a really solid chance that you're not subscribed, even if you're this far into the video. And if you're this far into the video, I think you like the content. So maybe leave a subscribe and like the video because it really helps. I never remember to do that. And it's so important because the way YouTube's algorithm works, subscribers are kind of a vanity metric anymore. Subscribing to a channel doesn't really mean that you're guaranteed to watch their video. And 90% of the time, you are going to be presented videos that the YouTube algorithm knows you're probably going to like repeatedly without having to subscribe to that channel. So subscriptions don't super matter anymore, but they do make my the number go up brain happy. So Michael vows to find William, goes looking for him, eventually gets a lead in Fazbear Frights, which is the FNAF 3 location. Gets a job there. Doesn't matter that he looks creepy because it's a horror attraction. And again, it's possible that by the time of FNAF 3, he's healed. We know for a fact from the books that Remnant can heal you. In the first Tales from the Pizzaplex story, literally a girl is scraping Remnant off onto hospital patients and they get better because of it. So Remnant can heal you. So there's a chance that by now Michael just looks kind of weird, not like a purple walking zombie anymore. As much as I love that fan interpretation, I think Chloe Imagination has such a good design for post-scoop Michael, but it's also super possible that he just looks like a weird human at that point. But after that, we have FNAF 3, which I believe takes place in 2015. FNAF 3 obviously doesn't work, and then in 2023, he gets another lead from Freddy Fazbear Pizza Simulator or FNAF 6. FNAF 6 fire happens, everyone should die. I think Michael Afton's role after Freddy Fazbear Pizza Simulator is that he becomes Old Man Consequences. This is that lake line through I was talking about, where I think Michael Afton's perfect afterlife, he's not going to heaven. I don't think so. Because I think we need to keep in mind that Scott wrote this story, and I think Scott wrote this story with heaven and hell in mind, and purgatory. I don't think Michael's going to heaven. Maybe he is, but I think Michael in purgatory makes more sense. And I think Michael's purgatory is Old Man Consequences area. I think Michael's afterlife being fishing at his childhood lake nearby where Dave was buried, I think that is Michael's perfect afterlife at the end of it all. Just letting go and relaxing. And I think it also makes the most sense for Michael's character arc. If after all of this, he is just a figure to warn others to avoid the path of vengeance. and just like William Afton's gone, let it go. That makes a lot of sense for Michael's character, in my opinion. And that's Michael's timeline. Who knows what happens before he kills his brother? But, we'll take some questions because, like I said, recording's at 46 minutes. I took a lot of pauses. I wouldn't doubt if we're at like 30 minutes or so. So we'll do questions just in case. If you want your questions answered on the podcast, feel free to send them in to Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. That is in the description to copy and paste. So feel free to do that. It's a pain to type out. And I'm going to be super real. If you asked a question like a month plus ago and I haven't responded to it, you can ask it again. Feel free. It's been like I get a lot of emails. Some of them have been missed. And if we go long, we go long. Who cares? Our first question comes from Monster, they, them. It's the question I was going to take last week. If FLAF is an in-universe game with effects on the lore, do you think it can run off of FNAF World rules? What happens out there as an effect in here? There's a sinkhole in the game because it happened on the flip side. So I immediately hesitate to think that FNAF is an in-universe game with effects on the lore. FLAF to me feels very much like a Celebration spinoff. Now, I do think it's possible that a spinoff can give us insights into the lore, right? Is FLAF having like Mangle drive a car mean that Mangle can drive a car? No. But is the Midnight Motorist car being Spring Bonnie themed important? I think so. So as far as what like FLAF and its I'll do this after. But as far as with like FLAF and its effects on the lore, I hesitate for it being like a FNAF World situation. I think it makes a lot more sense for it to literally just be a spin-off celebration that does not necessarily involve or drastically affect the game's timeline. So I would kind of just throw out the question outright. If it were to take place in game, I think FNAF World makes sense, but I think a more apt example would be something like Pop Goes Arcade. I don't know if there's something that works exactly like this in the FNAF universe, but Pop Goes Arcade is a pretty good cross-reference. Where Pop Goes Arcade, unless I'm misremembering the lore of this game, it's a real game and a real arcade machine in Pop Goes that is being affected and possessed by the spirit of not Bonnie the animatronic, but Bonnie the daughter of, not Simon, Fritz. It's been a while since I've brushed up my Pop Goes lore. And I primarily knew Pop Goes 2016 lore, and I know that Kane and the team have like fully revamped the lore and made it a little less convoluted for Evergreen and the new Pop Goes Arcade. So I don't know a lot of the lore yet, but just trying to remember what I do of 2016 Pop Goes. It's been a while. But yeah, thank you for your question. I hope that gave you some insight. I don't know. I kind of sped through that a little bit. My apologies. Our next question comes from Kira, she, her. What if the story on the wall is actually... So this is about Amanda the Adventurer too. I should specify. What if the story on the wall is actually reversed, where Amanda is the knight and Sam is the princess? They were happy in the beginning, but Amanda disappeared. So Sam approached the wizard, Hamlin, to see her again. But the wizard turned him into a monster. Wooly, who was a monster to Amanda. He found Amanda, but she didn't recognize him as her father, and saw only the monster because either as his contract to see her, or because he didn't want to show having dangerous messages to kids, he was aligned to Hamlin on keeping the show on track. She killed him in the first game, and then realized it was him after, and is now grieving and wandering the world alone. For this theory, Wooly in the second game is a Hamlin employee. That's a really good... I think that's a really solid interpretation of that night story. My only hesitancy is the way that Amanda treats Wooly and Sam in the second game. The idea that like Amanda always didn't really like Wooly, but the beginning of the beginning of us seeing Wooly in the second game, she is like, I don't want him here, and fights him, and then like whatever, I'll deal with it. But anytime you bring up Wooly in the second game, specifically when he's nearby, I think the most pertinent, not even any time, the most pertinent time you can bring up Wooly is, who do you trust? If you say Wooly, she kind of has this line where it feels like Wooly betrayed her. She's like, yeah, I trusted him too once. And if you bring up Sam in that question, her response is, yeah, he was so trusting, and that can be a mistake or something. So my only problem, and I kind of had the same thing with I really like Game Theory's video on who Wooly is, being a Hamlin employee and Sam, like working for Hamlin to keep things on track. I think that makes a lot of sense. My only hesitancy with that and your question by proxy is if Amanda 1 Wooly was Sam and Amanda killed him, figures out it was Sam, and is grieving and wandering the world alone, why does she think Wooly betrayed her? That's my question, right? Because if she knows like Sam is dead, this is a Hamlin, even if she knows like Sam is dead, this new Wooly is a different Wooly and it's not my father. Where did Wooly betray Sam? Or where did Wooly betray Amanda? That's the big question for me. So we would have to address that. But I think that's really the only issue right now for that theory. It's a really good one. I really like that interpretation. So thank you for your question, Kira. Our next question comes from Jackson, he, him. My question is how is Glitchtrap the Mimic One program if that wasn't a thing in Help Wanted? William is a smart man who would know how to make himself a digital form to then be in Help Wanted. Plus William is the only one we know who would look like a golden rabbit. Thank you. So yeah, this comes from just like not, a lot of the Mimic One being Glitchtrap comes from the books. So if you haven't read them, that's probably where you're getting confused here. Now, granted, I don't want to sound conceited or like I'm saying this is confirmed. We still have no confirmation on what Glitchtrap is. We only have theories. But the prevailing theory is that Glitchtrap is the Mimic One program manifested in some way. Now, this could be with William's agony or even his consciousness. That's totally possible. Or it could just be the Mimic One program. The thing is, the Mimic definitely goes back to like Fall Fest 1979, so the Mimic, and by proxy, the Mimic One program, have both been around for a long time. So if the Mimic One program was uploaded to Help Wanted, the reason it would look like that felt costume is because when it was in use in Fall Fest, so were those felt costumes. Frankly, it explains a lot more than William, because I feel like William would want to look like Spring Bonnie, not the felt suit from Fall Fest. That's just my hunch there, but like every time we've seen William, he feels most comfortable in the Spring Bonnie suit, not the felt costume. Now that could be because the felt costume wasn't in use at the time and it's the closest thing. We don't know. But that's kind of where the thinking for Glitchtrap being the Mimic One program comes from. Thank you for your question. Our last one comes from TC, he, him. What are your thoughts on the Sonic 3 movie being PG? Do you think they'll have to hold back on some parts of Shadow's backstory? Thank you for your question. I think it makes sense, right? I never thought we'd get a world where Sonic 3 would be PG-13 or, God forbid, R. At the end of the day, they are kids' movies. They're going to make them as kid-friendly as possible. But as far as will being PG have to hold back some of Shadow's backstory, I don't think so. It'll hold back Shadow cursing, which, as funny as it is, isn't necessarily part of his backstory. And it'll also hold back Shadow using guns, I feel like, which, again, super funny, not necessary to his character. And as far as his actual backstory goes, I think you can do a lot by, I think you can show and talk about Maria being shot and this backstory a lot while still being PG. I think a great example, if you haven't watched yet, the Sonic X Shadow Generations animations they made to promote the game and like it coming out, did an excellent and beautiful portrayal of that moment where in this like weird memory cluster where Shadow's memories are converging and fighting and everything's happening, he turns around and there's a series of shattered glass with a broken silhouette of Maria with a shattered like hole right in her chest to show that she was shot. And it was a beautiful shot. And that's probably PG. So I think there are ways to show Shadow's backstory truthfully and fully while remaining PG. So I don't think that's any cause for alarm. That's my thoughts on there. Once again, if you want your questions talked about on the podcast, feel free to send them in to Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. It's in the description to copy and paste because it's a pain to type out. But until next time, thank you for watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. We hope to enjoy your future patronage. Bye-bye for now.